The dinner rush at Rosie's Diner was finally winding down when Sarah Mitchell delivered the check to table 7. The customer, a man in an expensive suit who'd been working on his laptop between bites of meatloaf, barely glanced at her as she set down the bill. "Thank you for dining with us," Sarah said with her practiced smile, the one that hid her exhaustion. She'd been on her feet for 9 hours, and her 6-year-old daughter Mia was waiting at the neighbor's apartment, probably already asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch. The man nodded absently, still typing. Sarah moved on to her other tables, refilling coffee, clearing plates, maintaining the cheerful demeanor that kept her employed at Rosie's, one of the few places that let her work the evening shift so she could be home with Mia during the day. 20 minutes later, the suited man stood and walked out without a word. Sarah approached table 7 to clear it and check the receipt. Her heart sank. The bill was $47.82. The tip line had a clear, decisive 0 written in black ink. Not even $1. Nothing. Sarah felt the familiar sting, not just of the lost money, but of the judgment it implied. She knew some customers assumed single mothers were failures, that waiting tables at 29 meant she'd made bad choices. They didn't know about her husband's death 3 years ago, the medical bills, the struggle to keep Mia fed and housed while working a job that barely paid minimum wage plus tips. She picked up the check holder, ready to move on. She couldn't afford to dwell on the bad tippers when there were other tables to serve. But something made her pause. The check holder felt heavier than it should. Sarah opened it again. Underneath where the receipt had been, hidden from view, was a business card and a folded piece of paper. The business card read, Robert Chen, CEO, Chen Capital Investments. The paper was a handwritten note. Dear Sarah, I apologize for the 0 tip, but I needed you to find this note, and I suspected you wouldn't look carefully if I'd left a normal tip. 3 hours ago, I watched you calm down a crying child at table 4 while his mother dealt with a work emergency. You entertained him with napkin origami until his mom was free. 2 hours ago, you noticed an elderly man at table 2 struggling to read the menu. You sat with him, read the options aloud, and made recommendations based on his dietary restrictions without making him feel embarrassed. An hour ago, you covered a coworker's table when she broke down crying in the back room. You served both sections without complaint. And 45 minutes ago, I overheard you on the phone during your break, telling your daughter that you couldn't afford the school field trip, but you'd make it up to her with a special homemade dinner instead. You kept your voice cheerful so she wouldn't know you were crying. I didn't come to Rosie's Diner for the food tonight, Sarah. I came because my assistant told me about a waitress who goes above and beyond for everyone, customers, co-workers, her daughter, while struggling to keep her own head above water. I came to see if the stories were true. They were. I'm offering you a position at Chen Capital as my executive assistant. Starting salary, $85,000 a year, full benefits, flexible hours that work with your daughter's schedule. You'll coordinate my appointments, manage communications, and help run my charitable foundation. You're probably thinking you're not qualified. You're wrong. I've had 5 executive assistants in 3 years, all had fancy degrees. None had what you have, genuine care for people, ability to manage chaos with grace, and the work ethic of someone fighting for their child's future. The 0 tip was a test. Would you look closer? Would you be curious? Would you follow through even when something seemed wrong? You did. That's exactly the quality I need. Call me tomorrow, or don't. It's your choice. But know this, I'm not offering charity. I'm making a smart business decision. You have skills most people can't learn in any college. Respectfully, Robert Chen. P.S. Check the envelope I left under the napkin dispenser. That's not part of the job offer. That's simply what I should have left as a tip for exceptional service, plus a little extra for your daughter's field trip. Sarah's hands shook as she lifted the napkin dispenser. Underneath was a white envelope. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was $500 in cash, and another note. The tip is $100. The other $400 is for Mia's field trip and any other extras you've been putting off. She deserves those experiences, and you deserve not to cry about them. Sarah sat down hard in the booth, tears streaming down her face. Around her, the diner continued its evening rhythm, dishes clattering, coffee brewing, the bell dinging as orders came up. But for Sarah, the world had stopped. "Honey, you okay?" Rosie herself appeared, concern creasing her weathered face. She'd owned this diner for 30 years and knew every waitress's struggles. Sarah couldn't form words. She just handed Rosie the note. Rosie read it slowly, her eyes widening. When she finished, she sat across from Sarah and grabbed her hands. "Baby girl, this is real. Robert Chen. I know who he is. He's that tech billionaire who sold his company and now runs investment funds. He's legitimate. But why me? You're not just anything." Rosie's voice was fierce. "You're the waitress who stays late when someone's struggling, who gives free meals to homeless people and tells me to take it from your tips, who makes every customer feel seen and cared for even when you're running on 4 hours of sleep. That's not just anything, Sarah. That's extraordinary. I don't have a college degree. I barely finished high school before I got pregnant. And you've been running a master class in human decency every day since." Rosie squeezed her hands. "This man saw what I see, what everyone here sees. You belong somewhere better than this. But you've been so good to me, which is exactly why I'm telling you to call him tomorrow and take this job." Rosie's eyes were wet now. "I love you like a daughter, Sarah. And like any mother, I want better for you than this. You deserve better hours, better pay, better everything." Sarah called the next morning, her stomach churning with nerves. Robert Chen answered on the second ring. "Mr. Chen, this is Sarah Mitchell from Rosie's Diner." "Sarah, I'm glad you called. Have you thought about my offer?" "I have, but I need to understand why me. Really?" Robert was quiet for a moment. "May I tell you a story? 25 years ago, I was a broke college dropout working 3 jobs, trying to send money home to my mother. I ate at a diner like Rosie's because it was cheap, and there was a waitress, older woman, probably 50, who noticed I was exhausted. She started giving me extra food, no charge. Told the manager I'd paid for it." Sarah could hear the emotion in his voice. "One night I broke down and told her I was thinking about dropping out completely, going home, giving up on my business idea. She sat with me during her break and said something I never forgot. The people who are going to change the world aren't always the ones who had it easy. Sometimes they're the ones who fought so hard they learned what really matters." "She sounds wonderful," Sarah said softly. "She was. Her name was Dorothy. She died 5 years ago, and I never got to properly thank her for believing in me when I had nothing." Robert's voice strengthened. "But I can honor her memory by recognizing the same quality in others, by giving someone else the chance she gave me." "I see. Sarah, you have a gift for making people feel valued, for managing chaos, for seeing what needs to be done and doing it without being asked. Those aren't skills you learn in business school. They're qualities you earn through hardship and maintain through character. I need someone like that. My company needs someone like that." Sarah thought about Mia, about the field trips and school supplies and doctor visits she'd been putting off, about the future she wanted for her daughter, one where education was possible, where opportunities weren't limited by circumstance. "When would I start?" She could hear Robert smile through the phone. "How about Monday? That gives you time to give proper notice at Rosie's and arrange childcare. Speaking of which, our building has an on-site childcare program for employees. Mia can come to work with you until she starts school and be there after school. No extra cost." Sarah started crying again. Thank you so much." "Thank you for being exactly who you are, for showing me that Dorothy's legacy lives on in people like you." 6 months later, Sarah stood in Robert Chen's office, her office adjacent to his, coordinating his schedule while simultaneously managing grant applications for the Chen Foundation. Mia was in the building's childcare center, thriving in an environment with educational activities and new friends. Sarah had proven invaluable. Her ability to read people, to manage competing priorities, to make everyone feel heard, skills honed through years of waitressing, translated perfectly to executive assistance. Robert's business ran smoother than it had in years. But more than that, Sarah had helped him reimagine the Foundation's mission. Her insights into what struggling families actually needed, not what wealthy donors thought they needed, had transformed their giving strategy. "You know what I realized?" Robert said one afternoon as they reviewed Foundation proposals. "That zero tip was the best business investment I ever made." Sarah laughed. "You mean it was a calculated strategy?" "Partially. I knew you'd look closer if something seemed off. But mainly, I wanted to see if you'd still serve the next customer with the same care after receiving a zero tip. Most people would have gotten bitter, would have let it affect their service." "And? You went to table 9 and gave them the same excellent service you'd given me. That's when I knew for certain." Robert smiled. "Character revealed under pressure is character you can count on." Sarah's desk phone rang. She answered professionally, then covered the receiver. "It's the Children's Hospital. They want to meet about the Foundation's proposal to fund medical care for families in crisis." "Take the meeting," Robert said. "You know more about what these families need than I do." As Sarah scheduled the meeting, she thought about that night at Rosie's, the exhaustion, the disappointment of the zero tip, the shock of what she'd found underneath, how one moment had changed everything. She kept the original note in her desk drawer. On hard days, she'd read it again, remembering that sometimes the worst moments contain hidden gifts, that sometimes a zero tip leads to a 7-figure opportunity, that sometimes the person who seems to value you least is actually seeing you most clearly. And she thought about Dorothy, the waitress she'd never met, whose kindness to a broke college student had rippled forward through decades, eventually reaching a struggling single mother who just needed someone to see her worth. "I'm meeting with the hospital next Tuesday," Sarah said, hanging up the phone. "And Robert? Thank you. For the job, yes, but more for teaching me that my years at Rosie's weren't wasted time. They were preparation." "Not preparation," Robert corrected gently. "Foundation. You didn't become qualified for this job despite being a waitress. You became qualified because of it. Never forget that." Sarah nodded, then returned to her work, coordinating meetings, managing crises, making sure everyone in Robert's orbit felt valued and heard, the same skills she'd used serving meatloaf at Rosie's, just in a different context. The billionaire had left a zero tip. But underneath that zero was an opportunity that changed not just Sarah's life, but her daughter's future and the lives of countless families the Foundation would help. Because sometimes, the thing that looks like rejection is actually recognition. Sometimes a zero contains everything. And sometimes a single mom waiting tables has more executive leadership skills than entire boardrooms of MBAs. She just needs someone willing to look beneath the surface to see it.